Good morning, folks. Good afternoon. We have a panel that is spreading across most of our time zones. So wherever you're piping in from, happy Tuesday. Right. Well, we're gonna give a couple minutes to let folks trickle in. But we'll briefly introduce myself. My name is Ina Bakioki. I am here on AI staff. I am the 2030 program manager, 2030 commitment program manager. I am sure I have corresponded with many of you through our inbox. So, and you will be accustomed to seeing my name soon as reporting season kicks off January 1st and ends March 31st. And all right. As we're kind of letting folks keep trickling in, I am going to put out a poll, just a quick pulse check. I would love to hear, and if you want to introduce yourself more formally in the chat, I encourage you to. This is all things connections about 2030 commitment network, peer-to-peer network, but I'd love to hear what your firm size is and how long you've been a signatory. All right, I'll release these. It's all anonymous, so if you have any qualms, but I'll show this in a second. We've got about 85% of folks responding, 87. Great, I'll end it now. We have people able to see hopefully a pretty good smattering of small, medium, large. And then we have majority of folks being either new signatories, brand new within the year, or a bit more seasoned, 5+ years. So that is interesting. Excuse me. All right. Well, I will start to kick off this presentation. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our kind of final wrap up, what we call the 2030 and DDx Refresher series. So hopefully many of you were able to join us for our previous ones. So that was kind of the walkthrough through DDx that my colleague Melissa Moranci was able to put on, as well as the energy modeling. In case from energy modeling, we had two great members, 2030 working group members, who were able to chat all things nits and grits of energy modeling. And yeah, so we are going to round this series out talking all about firm culture. So course learning objectives, we are going to chat about kind of what it means to be a 2030 signatory and how that really has kind of changed for the better kind of firm culture. We have a great set of panelists that will introduce themselves shortly, but we'll talk about data visualization, sustainability action plans, reporting strategies, and then kind of narrowing it down specific to small firm culture. All right, I will kick things off and I'll let David introduce himself.
Hi, good morning all. David Arkin. I'm a co-chair of the AIA's 2030 Commitment Working Group, principal of a small firm in Northern California, and very excited to be able to share a little bit about what our small but mighty firm does in regard to the 2030 commitment.
Thanks, David. Keith?
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone, wherever you are in the country. My name is Keith Hempel. I'm President and Chief Design Officer of LPA Design Studios. We're a 400-person firm with offices in California and Texas, and I am a member of the 2030 Working Group.
Ashley?
Hi, everyone. Ashley Mulhall with Orca Winslow. we're currently about 200 people with offices all over the country. And we've been a signatory since 2009, so one of the OGs, and I'm a past chair of this 2030 working group.
Great. Jesse?
Hi, everybody. My name is Jesse Walton. I'm an associate principal at Malum Architects. We have 2 offices in the Pacific Northwest. We've been signatories to the 2030 commitment for 12 years, and I'm the incoming co-chair for the 2030 working group.
Great. Thank you all. And I know we're still having folks trickle in, totally fine. Kind of reintroduce myself. My name is Ina Bakioki. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the 2030 program manager. All right. So just kind of setting the stage. What does it mean to be a 2030 signatory? It seems 95% of you are signatories already, so you should know this through and through. But we are we're a pledge program that comes out of AIA, and we are a community of over 1,300 signatory firms that represent over 62,000 architecture and design professionals. And so this is kind of the growth of our programs, our signatories. So we have a couple of our panelists. They were one of the original signatories that first year, 135. And now 13 years later, we just broke 1,300, which is always an exciting milestone and looks wonderful on marketing. Instead of saying over 1,200, we can now notch that up to over 1,300, just barely. And so kind of just looking at who these signatories are. I know that a lot of you are able to kind of join our mostly virtual, sometimes in-person events kind of at a conference, but mostly virtual here on the Zoom ethosphere, as well as kind of our base camp is where we congregate all folks in terms of discussion items, sharing news and events that you all might be interested in. Please email me at 2030commitment@ai.org if you do not already have access to that base camp. It is such a great hub to kind of connect with other peers, especially when reporting season comes around and you just want to ask a ton of questions and crowdsource that information. But so this is kind of a snapshot in terms of firm size, where our 2030 signatories lie. This was taken about in May, so I suspect these numbers haven't changed a ton, but we have a pretty representative kind of smattering of small, medium, large firms. And I'll also note that when we take that snapshot of 2030 reporting signatories, so as you know, we have over 1,300 signatory firms. We had about 430 firms report this past reporting year. So we're always trying to get that number up as well. So important. And so kind of the small, medium, large percentages also mirror that of reporting signatories as well. So kind of the 2 main facets of being a 2030 signatory, as you all know, is creating a firm-wide sustainability action plan. And we will chat more in depth about these as well very shortly. And then the second is reporting your data into the DDx. It shouldn't come to a surprise to any of you, but if you have any further questions after this webinar, please contact us. And with that, I am going to hand this off to our 2 panelists, Keith and Ashley, to walk us through a mini presentation on sustainability action plans and what that's meant for their firm culture.
Thanks, Ina. Not seeing control yet.
I've given Keith control, but I can happy to hand that over to Ashley if.
I think I'm first. Yeah. Okay. So, so a few years ago, our working group created this guide document, creating a sustainability action plan that works. From a lot of our experiences and successes and some of our failures, and trying to give firms guidance on how to do this for the first time or the fifth time. I say that because when we started out, there was no guidance document. There was just a few published sustainability action plans out there. So we kind of gathered them together and said, okay, what do we do? Let's do something kind of like this. So we were, essentially just using precedents, but not really thinking through things that thoroughly. And I can tell you that a lot of our successes have been when we really do some deep dives into our firm culture and how 2030 reporting and just in general sustainable design folds into our firm culture. So our first year of reporting was 2010. It was, sorry, I'm still not seeing control. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Okay, so our first year of reporting was pretty dismal in terms of our performance. It's one of those things that you can't understand what you don't measure. So, we kind of did this, and if you look at our interiors only projects, this was one of the last years before LEDs really hit the marketplace hard. We were barely getting any kind of reduction with our interior lighting LPD, and we were at about 30%. So it was great to kind of do some benchmarking. I think if you were to do this today, just by meeting today's codes, you would be doing a lot better than we were. But it definitely gave us a little kick in the pants to say, hey, we need to be doing a lot better than this. What can we do? So we went through sustainability action planning, and really a lot of that led to looking at our design process. We were kind of skipping some important steps along the way, and it was through the process of kind of understanding how we could design better that we made a lot of progress. If you could switch my slide. Thank you. So we use the Integrated Design Guide to Green Building as a framework for taking a look at our process, understanding how we work with consultants, how we work with owners, how we align a lot of the design strategies that go into sustainable design and make them work for each other instead of against each other. Next slide. So this is our reporting history from our first year of reporting, which was 2010 data in 2011. And, kind of a slow, steady growth from 2011. And then kind of as we were really implementing our first sustainability action plan, which was completed in 2012 and then ramped up, we had our best year ever, which was 2016. That same year, we acquired a firm. So we added a lot of new architects who, we added a firm that was not in the 2030 program yet. So we absorbed them, and we hit a rut again. And I think that's kind of the story of how we've been ever since in terms of our company performance. That if, I would say here in Phoenix, where we started off, our performance is a lot higher in general than we are firm-wide, but that's because we keep absorbing firms. And as we, noticed in 2017 this dip in our performance, that's when we said, okay, let's take another look at our sustainability action plan. It's not working for us anymore. So if you go to the next slide. So we went through this whole recommitment process that aligned with what the 2030 commitment was doing. Said, okay, we need to rethink everything. We had doubled in size. We were a different firm. We had multiple offices. How do we manage sustainable design in a firm with multiple offices instead of just one? We're doing work in a lot of different climate zones. Next slide. And so we went through a revamp 2017, 2018 into our sustainability action plan. And we used the guidance document that we had just published. and worked through it with a larger group of people, with a lot of the leadership of our firm, and really came up with some solid updates to that, and really a structure around how we were going to organize sustainability in a large firm. Next slide. And then also looking at every project, how are we going to do this on every project? We have large projects where it's frankly usually easier to achieve this performance, but some of the smaller projects like a restroom remodel, how are we going to deal with it? So we came up with kind of a benchmarking system for projects of different sizes and say, okay, for any project, we're going to pick 3 goals from the AI framework for design excellence. We're going to deal with water, follow the water rules of thumb, and then kind of escalated things from that point as project sizes increased. And then any project that has a parking lot, we're going to look at electric vehicle charging stations, renewables. So we created a benchmark for us that this is the bare minimum of what we need to do for every project. Next slide. So after that, we presented it to the firm. We really did something that I think is key to progress in 2030 commitment, and that's align our design process with sustainability. So I've been working ever since then, 2020 for sure, in how do we better align and work together, design and sustainability. So the great thing was we went through this process using our sustainability action plan guidance document, and the design leaders of the firm said, hey, we want to go through the same process about design in general. So we essentially started over again with the SAP guidance document and went through it with the lens of design. And so now those two things are incredibly well aligned. It's so much easier to talk about sustainability when all the designers are on board. Next slide. We have an aligned purpose for the firm that includes the AIA 2030 commitment. Next slide. We have a defined definition of success, a process action plan that includes kind of our combined sustainability action plan, and a design action plan into like an overall quality action plan. So how are we improving every project, not just about design and sustainability, but everything we do. So it's truly integrated at this point with our firm operations. Next slide. So the last thing we did was to realign our design philosophy so that it was essentially the AIA's framework for design excellence, and say, yeah, this is what good design really is. We're going to use this for every project. It's going to be the benchmarking tool for quality of design at our firm going forward. And last slide for me, Ina. So these are just some examples of how that firm culture can start to become more visible within your office. Example from DLR Group, where they have a performance board for every project that they've got in their office. They have, a bar graph that shows, successes and failures, so everyone can see it, and you're sort of beholden to your peers on performance. And then an example from Payat, where they're taking details that exist in the field. This is an example from a magazine article, and critiquing them and saying, hey, don't do this, do something different. Let's not repeat others' mistakes. So those are just some examples of how this firm culture can translate into more visibility. Keith, you're next.
Great, thanks, Ashley. So here's a little bit more detail about our firm, LPA Design Studios. Like I said, we're 400 20 employees across California and Texas, but we're a pretty diverse practice. So we practice in a number of different market sectors: civic and culture, commercial, healthcare, higher education, K-12, mixed use, sports and rec, and workplace. So a lot of different interests, a lot of different expertise, and that's where our sustainability action plan really came in. It allows us to gather that expertise and create a base level of fluency that everyone can kind of grab onto and apply to their projects. So you can see here our chart of how we've been tracking with our data we've been reporting to the AIA ever since 2013. And the green lines represent the increasing thresholds that we have throughout every 5 years. The AIA commitments threshold increases 10%. And 2013, we started, right around 50% and had a little bit of a dip in 2014 and have been kind of climbing upwards ever since. What we've known and what we've realized as a firm is that the increasing thresholds require greater consistency. I think early on, when we were at a lower threshold, when we were a smaller firm, larger projects could move the needle more substantially and could maybe cover up some of the smaller and lower performing projects. But 2018, 2019, when we were able actually to achieve the 70% threshold, we realized that, to get to 80% and make that climb towards 80%, it's really about every project. And talking with our clients about that across all our different practices on every project, to have every project try to increase their performance as much as possible. So moving forward, looking at our sustainability action plan.
I think you might have to click on the screen once more.
Got it. Whoa. Okay, there we go. So looking at our sustainability action plan, when we sat down to kind of create this, right, and realizing that we really wanted to use this as a tool to promote fluency and to promote, performance across all our projects, we talked about this being a design tool, right? We wanted it to be accessible. We wanted it to be used, right? So we talked about it being a living document, and I think Ashley spoke to that they're going through a rebranding of their sustainability action plan. We're doing the same. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, but this wasn't a document we wanted to sit on the shelf. We wanted to be able to, have it evolve as our process needed to evolve to meet the increasing targets and march towards carbon neutrality. The other thing we wanted to do is make it simple, easy to read, easily digestible. We didn't want it to be overwhelming, but we also wanted to build into it the ability for it to be scalable. The addition of additional resources, the addition of case studies that might help our project teams, all of that's kind of built into our framework so that this can grow and evolve as we do. And at the end of the day, this had to make us a better firm. It's not something that we're just doing to meet the requirements of the AIA 2030 commitment. We really wanted this to make us a better firm. If you're interested, there's a QR code, there's a link. We'd love to have you check out our sustainability action plan. It's not only available to our staff internally, it's also on our public website and available to our clients and all people who are interested in learning more about who we are and what we do. So what we did with our sustainability action plan is we broke it up into 3 sections. The first section is talking about our design process and how we design. It's talking about our commitment to being an integrated firm. We have architects, landscape architects, interior designers, engineers, all under one roof. And we use our integrated process to help bring informed design solutions to our clients. So in this section, we're talking about how we set goals for projects. We talk about the process and the design process, how we track projects, we set targets, we track progress, we analyze the results from our projects, and then we use those results to create lessons learned that we then feed into the next project and create this feedback loop that helps us apply continuous improvement to each of our projects. It also talks to the framework for design excellence, as Ashley's mentioned as well. So the second section talks about how we practice. So that's how we actually live in our studios and in our communities. Talks about how we are as an organization, how we source local vendors to help with our day-to-day operations, how we are tracking our own energy footprints within our studios, checking our utility bills, checking our performance as our studios to make sure that we're practicing what we preach, and living this informed practice in our day-to-day lives to kind of walk the walk. And then our third section is talking about how we share. So how we share is both internal and external. Internally, talking about education, talking about the programs and the resources we have available for our teams, letting them know where they can find resources about building performance and energy modeling to help them increase their fluency and bring that informed process into their projects. But also how we share externally. How do we talk to our clients? How do we talk to our communities about the importance of reacting to climate change and high performance buildings and their role in reducing the carbon footprint of the built environment. So those three sections were started. What we've seen over the last year and a half is we've brought some changes to our organization. First is we're doing much more in-depth carbon tracking of our operations. So we've added that into the how we practice section. We're also signatory to the SE 2050 commitment. And so we've been talking about tracking embodied carbon in our design process in the how we design section. So all of those allow us to be, allow this document to be a living document that changes as we do. And
Thanks so much, Keith.
I'm going to hand it off to Jesse.
Thank you all for bearing with Zoom. I see. I'm just going through the chat, seeing if we have any questions. We do have a Q&A section at the end, but I may as well we're pretty nimble here. Toss one over to Keith and Ashley that just came in. What recommendations could you give for establishing and reviewing sustainability standards for new signatory firms? We are running into issues saying, consider and think about blank, rather than this is our standard.
I can just give some advice. We're continuously evolving that discussion. And I'm honestly constantly testing it with project teams and seeing what works. And quite frankly, the same communication tactics don't work with every studio or every project team or every client. So we're having to become pretty nimble on that and just sort of understand that, we're able to work in several different ways that can be successful depending on where our clients and our projects stand.
Yeah, I think I might add to that too, that it's about communication, right? We talk at LPA all the time about our firm's 90-day memory. If we say something in January, we find we have to say it again in April, and then we have to say it again in July, and then on into October, November, right? The grind of projects, the day-to-day deadlines, responding to clients. It's really easy to forget things you've talked about at a staff meeting. 3 months ago. So until we start to see the changes we're looking for, we try really hard to re-communicate the standards and the guidelines and the goals and the targets we've set as a firm so that they stay front of mind for our entire project team, all our project teams and all of our studios.
Thanks, Ashley and Keith. I will note also just to set the stage a little, we have a small smattering of mini presentations, and we do have an opportunity to go into breakout rooms and delve more into each of the mini sections that will be presented. So if you are ready to talk all things sustainability action plans further, there's time to do that as well. Right. Next, I will hand this over to Jesse.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm going to talk about what to do next after you've reported, or maybe more specifically, what we at Malem do next after we report every year. You can go to the next slide.
You should
so
also
we're.
oh
yeah, let me see if I can control it here. Yep, it works. So after we submit at the end of March, there's a small group of us, so a firm of 80 people, 40 in each office. So we have a small group that is responsible for the data collection of all the AIA 2030 commitment data. And then we task that small group, it's about 8 of us, and it varies from in experience and skill level from folks that are out of school, just out of school, have a lot of passion around sustainability, but maybe don't understand the metrics very well, to folks like me who've been out of school for 20 years or more and are deeply passionate about the data and sustainable design. So this small group kind of educates itself internally, but then also is tasked with educating the rest of the firm about the data that they collected. So we meet, we create a presentation. It usually takes us a couple months. We're a little bit hungover from all the data collection, January through March. And so it takes us a couple months to come together and create a presentation for the firm that we share back in May or June of that year. But we can go to the next slide here. This is a slide from one of those presentations, and the way we share the data back is in relating it to other numbers that the rest of the firm is familiar with. So this is a scatter plot showing the relationship of the PUI reduction percent, so 0 at the bottom, and then years on the x-axis. So the orange dot you see is our baseline, the 2003 CBEX data at 0% reduction. I see there's some chats coming in. Ina, is there something I should know?
Let me. I think you're all set.
No, okay. So this is relationship to energy codes that we all use every day. So this is a combination of both the International Energy Conservation Code percent reductions, as well as ASHRAE 90.1% reductions. So you can see those light blue and dark blue dots kind of moving upwards in percent efficiency as the code cycle continues. And so you can see the 2015, the 2018 IECC is about 50% reduction. And then we share our data at 65% reduction, but along that path of potentially getting to 100% reduction in the year 2030. So another way we share our data back to the firm is we relate it to the rest of our peers, the 1,300 firms who have signed up to it, and about, 500-ish that are reporting every year, as well as the 2030 commitment itself. So the green line is that stepped goal. I think Keith had a similar slide that showed up to 80%. I always like to look at the data all the way out to 2030 so that you can see kind of where we started and where we have yet to go. And then show our dark blue line is Malem's data every year throughout the years. So now we're at 65%, but then more importantly, show what it would take to get to 100%. I think often we think of net zero energy, net zero carbon as this really lofty goal, something that's incredibly challenging to achieve. And how are we ever going to get there? Maybe we're not even reporting our data, or maybe we're reporting our data, but we're not meeting the current target of 80%. But when you look at what it would take to get from, say, where we are at 65% all the way to 100% reduction, it's really only a 4% increase per year, which is not insurmountable when you look at the past years that what we've done, especially with energy codes, legislation changing around operational and embodied carbon all the time. So share the data back, relate it to numbers that everybody's familiar with. I would say is the first thing we do in our presentation. And then we start to kind of collect and explore the data in other ways, try to see if there's trends in our firm. Is our one project type performing better than another? Is one state's work performing better than another? Is one, how are our energy model projects doing compared to our non-energy model projects? Do we have to really worry about those non-energy model projects and bring them up, or are they comparable? So we started with Excel, right? I would advocate using free tools. You can bulk, if you don't know, you can download all your 2030 data from the DDX to Excel and do what you want with it. So our firm for many years was just kind of played with it in Excel, added some bar charts to be able to filter by PUI reduction or PUI itself or area. But this was a little bit restrictive. We had to create a lot of different visualizations to kind of understand the data in different ways. So we, about 4 years ago, we started exploring visualizing the data in Tableau. And so I'll run through it, which is a free, there's a version of it called Tableau Public, which is a free data visualization tool that easily imports Excel data. So this is an example of the project dashboard we have, and it displays our PUI reduction data in a number of ways that lets us push and pull it. On the left is a map showing all the locations of our projects. The size of the circles indicates the size of the project. The color, the darker the color green, the more it is towards 100% PUI, and then yellow towards 50%. Sorry, reduction, not PUI, reduction percent. The tree map in the middle, where it says building area sum, this is all of our projects by size. So you can begin to understand how the size of a project relates to your whole firm's overall average. I think Keith mentioned that, you know, one large project can really skew the data. This type of visualization can help you understand how your large projects are impacting the overall average. And then on the right-hand side, it's just basically a list of all the projects the 50, sorry, it's saying 37 projects we submitted this year in 2022. And then the average at the top. So I'll flip through the rest of these quickly. You can see you can start to select just certain locations. So if I highlight the projects in Seattle, I begin to understand the scale of the projects in the middle, and then the PUI average is actually much higher. It's at 72% for our Seattle projects. You can select maybe just the largest projects in your firm's portfolio. You say, let me look at the largest projects and see how the PUI reduction average is being affected and where those projects are. Or you can select, say, just the highest performing projects and see where those fall on the map, but also where they fall in terms of project size. You can see those projects performing above 70% are both our large projects and our small projects in this screen clip. And then you can start to filter by many other things like the year. So you can see in 2019, our average was much lower than our data in 2020. And this is in a very visual way with colors. It kind of jumps out at you where that improvement is happening. You can filter by location, you know, our Washington work, which is a good correlation to energy code in many cases, not in all cases. So our Washington work has a more stringent energy code than our Oregon work. And you can see that sorry, I went the wrong way. You can see that in the numbers, our Washington work being 70% reduction, our Oregon work being 57% reduction. You can also filter by modeled or non-modeled, because this is all the data we're already collecting as part of the 2030 commitment. Obviously, our non-modeled work is performing far worse, but we're actually seeing those two catching up as energy codes improve. And then our market sector, our K-12 work versus our healthcare work versus our higher ed work, et cetera. So I would highly advocate to just download that data from the DDX and start to explore it and see where you're doing well and see where you're doing not so well. It'll help you push on certain market sector project types in your work in the future. And I guess I want to say, the DDX is being updated this year. Maybe it's not going to look this cool, but it will be pretty cool. There's going to be a research tab that allows you to compare your work to the whole DDX data set in a way we have not been able to in the past. I think it's going to be really powerful. And we're going to be sharing that, when is that? In December?
December 5th.
December 5th.
Send a follow-up email with that registration link.
Yeah, there's going to be a presentation on all the updates to the DDX, including some new data visualizations that we have for everybody to use.
Great. I do see before we kind of jump over to small firm culture, a couple questions in the chat, and I'll okay. Does this Malum dashboard come directly out of the DDX, or did you make this in another program?
I built it in Tableau, but all the data is from the DDX. So I just pulled it off of the bulk download right from the DDX. And you can do all your firm's work over all the years, or you can just pick a particular year, but it's all available for you to download from the DDX.
Do IECC and ASHRAE share these yearly PUI targets that are on the scatter plot? And does California Title 24 offer the same thing? Title 24.
I want to say that was a visualization that was pulled from a by the numbers report of years past that AIA published. And I believe that scatter plot was developed in collaboration with the New Buildings Institute to correlate the energy codes to the 2003 CBEX baseline to understand what PEUI reduction percent each of those energy codes would achieve if you were to just do a prescriptive energy code compliant building. Did I get that right, Ina?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then kind of an overarching one that could also be tossed over to Keith and Ashley, as well as Jesse and David. How does building and project resilience tie into your SAPs?
I can say for us, it's through the AIA framework that we're going through that on every project, and we're trying to pull the resiliency in from that angle.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Measure 9, Design for Change, talks specifically to resilience and how to bring strategies in to your projects based on your region and your risks in your region to help mitigate them for your projects.
Well, and I'll jump in and note, since the slides seem to have advanced to a very key one for our firm, talking about passive survivability, which is what happens when the grid goes down. Is your building going to remain comfortable? And we find that that's appealing to a lot of our clients. And Ina, do I have control now, or?
Yes, you should.
Okay.
Perfect segue.
Yes, I can back up. Thanks. All right. If there are no more questions on that, we will talk a bit about targeting zero carbon. And it's my firm belief that small firms are the best suited to meeting the goals of the 2030 commitment. And the first step is to clearly communicate that this is one of your priorities, that this is something that you're offering to clients, and you will attract and educate clients right from the outset. Yeah, so happy to discuss how we can look at both the operating carbon and the embodied carbon in our firm culture. Not only, communicating it, but integrating it into one's design process. And I suspect that it likely already is for many of you here on this call, but just making sure that the steps that one is taking, this is putting the sustainability plan into action. As we were just discussing, passive survivability is one of those keys that builds resilience into our projects, and make sure that they are survivable in a world where the climate appears to be changing. Modeling and testing with tools is a key part of the process. You verifying and being able to tune design, and we use a program called Sapphira at our firm, and our particular hack is to turn off the HVAC systems, just like they might be if the grid goes down, and be able to just see what the comfort levels inside the building are at different times of the year. So small firms are generally working on the sorts of building types that offer the best opportunities to achieve the greatest reductions. You can see here, multifamily and single family residential office, and some of these others tend to be the sorts of projects that smaller firms are focused on. And again, I think we have the greatest reductions available to us, both in operating and in embodied carbon. Starting with aiming at zero site emissions by building all electric buildings, and then integrating photovoltaics or other on-site renewables, and then augmenting that with off-site renewable energy, where one can retain the renewable energy credits and actually achieve a 100% reduction in operating. Now, I realize that some of you around the country don't necessarily have a clean grid, and your local utilities don't offer a 100% renewable blend, but there are other ways of buying into community solar projects to be able to augment those projects that don't necessarily have the ability to integrate all on-site renewables. As Jesse noted, our next frontier is addressing embodied carbon and looking into ultra low carbon resources, reduced carbon cement products, steel made with renewable energy, and balancing those emissions with carbon storing resources. Once again, I think that our smaller firms can lead the way in this. We can demonstrate that buildings can become the Earth's sixth carbon sink. I like to think of small firms as often being able to do the research and development. As this DOE graph shows, while there are emitting materials, there are also common building materials that are carbon storing. And our firm is currently engaged in a unique prefabricated straw panel system that we hope to bring to greater use here in North America. Engaging your entire team. Achieving these goals must include everyone. And, in a small firm, everyone is everyone. We sort of are that same team. We don't have a dedicated group of people. At the same time, when we started this, we had a summer intern, and she built the first spreadsheet, which is still the basis by which we track all the project managers report in their data, and then one of our team does the actual data entry. I think we've translated that into a Google Sheet, but it's a way that everybody gets to participate in the project. And then we also engage everyone from a bicycle maintenance day to actually participating in building workshops. Small firms and medium-sized firms are somewhat underrepresented in the total number relative to how many of these firms there are in the AIA. And one of our hopes is to grow that participation. However, the small and medium-sized firms are almost nearly all of those that are achieving the current 80% reduction goals. So once again, I think that we are paving the way towards getting to 2030 in a carbon neutral built environment. And finally, I think you should all feel, obligated, and you should, turn your performance into success and share that news, and really be able to build on that success moving forward. We are going to break out into some sessions and look forward to discussing those with you who want to talk about small firms or a bit about embodied carbon. So let's move on to questions.
Great. Thanks, David. Looking in okay. So we're going to do a quick the idea was quote unquote rapid fire questions. So I will these are really common questions that we get, and just this is a chance for me to pick our panelists' brains a bit. We will do a more formal Q&A from the audience as well, but this is just a time for us to chat about the general firm culture 2030 questions that we get. So the first one is, what is the biggest challenge for your firm? This is going out to Keith and Ashley. And I guess maybe you can interpret this however you'd like. In my mind, when I wrote this question, it was, what's the biggest challenge for your firm kind of to engage with the 2030 commitment, whether that means creating or recreating a sustainability action plan. That could also mean meeting the PUI reduction goals that are set. Kind of what jumps out in your mind?
Yeah, I think I kind of spoke to it a little bit in my portion about consistency, right? And applying the design process needed on every project to reach high-performing buildings. I think a lot of that has to do with working directly with our clients, right? Because the goals and targets that we set have to be co-authored with our clients. And so building that consistency across all our projects means building fluency and building a comfort in talking with our clients about building performance and setting goals in that form. All of our clients are in different spaces in regards to where they are in their kind of sustainable journey, right? Some are cutting edge and leading. Some are just coming to the topic for the first time. So really understanding our clients' missions, understanding their values, and relating those missions and those values directly to building performance takes some work, and it takes a certain level of comfort in talking about sustainability to make sure that we're bringing the right solutions forward for our clients. And that only comes through a lot of education, a lot of talking, and a lot of building that confidence internally within the walls at LPA.
I think for me, my biggest challenge is rapid change. And, we went from a firm of one office, one location. We've acquired 3 firms in the last 8 years, all over the country. So I'm getting to know new clients, new project types, people who've never really thought about sustainable design before. So, for me, the biggest challenge is we're not all starting from the same place and we're not growing together yet. It seems like every time we start to get there, then we acquire another firm and I have to start all over. So for me, it's been kind of transitioning to being, I think, more in tune with what's going on in each office and getting to know those people and those clients so that I can create something that's going to work and going to, get people up to speed, so to speak. So that's been my biggest challenge is, I find something that works and then I immediately have to shift gears. So
Thanks. Right. This next one, and kind of we did have a question in the chat that mostly alludes to this as well. This is for Keith and Jesse. How do you speak to colleagues, whether they're internal or external, who are hesitant about joining or engaging with the 2030 commitment?
Yeah, I think actually one thing I'd start with is I actually try to kind of lean away from the word commitment and really talk about 2030 as a design tool, right? The process of the 2030 commitment requires is that you're setting targets for your projects, you're tracking your progress towards meeting those targets and analyzing those results and creating those lessons learned and creating that feedback loop. And that becomes those become really good habits. They become a design tool to help you improve. And when you talk about the value of improvement and creating higher and higher performing buildings, people start to understand the value, as opposed to just talking about, I have to create a sustainability action plan, I have to report data, I have to do what may be perceived as extra work. All that process of going through those steps actually has great value and makes you a better firm.
Maybe try to use peer pressure a little bit, like 1,300 firms, 62,000 design professionals. We're all doing it. Come on, like don't be left out. Like you don't want to be left out of hanging out with the cool kids. I don't know how well that works, but I try to phrase it in that way. But more seriously, I think I also just say it's important to measure where you're at so that you know how to get to where you want to go. If you're not measuring where you're at, you're not going to be able to get to this amazing future of net zero energy and carbon. So I think people realize that. I was thinking living in Seattle is a little bit of a bubble. Like there's a lot of, it's very crunchy granola space we live in here. So most people I talk to are kind of on the green train already, but not everybody. So yeah, a number of ways.
Thanks, Keith and Jesse. And for those who haven't seen it already, the most recent National Climate Assessment Report came out today, just a couple hours ago, and I haven't had a chance to delve into it, but that is such a wealth of information. And usually the overarching theme is we need to do better more quickly. So kind of as we're approaching 2030, certainly this is it is the get on board or else. All right, this third one, Ashley and David. And I know that this might be repetitive to some of kind of your talking points as well. You're happy to kind of do a really quick brief summary, but how do you speak to clients about the value of the 2030 commitment, just the tracking of data, improving energy performance, changing firm culture, etc.? What is your elevator pitch, for brevity's sake?
So I usually start with doing some research on the clients and what their priorities are, vision, mission. And oftentimes, our clients have already committed similar climate goals. It's just not necessarily trickling down to a design project yet. So that's usually where I start the conversation is, hey, your company's committed to this. We're committed too. Let's work together to do as much as we can on this project. We're finding that most of our clients these days are starting to consider climate goals or already have them. So, 2030 commitment is kind of our language. So just translating it into climate initiatives that they're already adopting.
Yeah, this is very much a part of our initial conversations with clients, and it's in many ways what we offer. I should have noted that, having been sort of on this path for 25 years, people seek us out for zero net energy buildings and now low embodied carbon. We've had a checklist, and we'll ask, are you interested in LEED certification or passive house? And sometimes people are interested in those principles, but they don't necessarily want to go forward with certification. But when we bring up the 2030 commitment, and that we'll be tracking our progress and targeting zero embodied energy and embodied carbon, and everybody's like, oh, great, yeah, we want that. And we'll often speak to it in terms of comfort and resilience and performance, and get very little resistance when we speak in those terms.
Thanks, Dave and Ashley. This next one is for Jesse and Ashley. How does your firm approach 2030 reporting? So kind of most of you should know kind of there are the three different methods: direct input, bulk import, and through the energy modeling software. And kind of as Ashley has alluded to before, her firm has grown quite a bit these past 5-7-ish years. So has your reporting methods changed, in short, as well?
I can say yes. We started off doing the direct entry every time. Then, we're using some energy modeling softwares that allow you to report with the API that works with the DDx. So we do that on a lot of projects now. And now we're using the bulk upload for the balance because it's just gotten to be more projects then we have the time to enter individually. So I've used all three methods now, and I say the one I like best is the direct reporting from the energy modeling software, obviously, because it doesn't require me to do as much work. But I think they're all useful and we use all of them.
The way our reporting has changed has mostly been on how we collect the data. We've been reporting ever since the 2030 commitment was just a spreadsheet. So we still just use a spreadsheet to collect all the data and do bulk upload. We had challenges. We tried to have people direct import into the website itself. And I think just had training challenges, like making sure that all the project managers or project architects knew how to interface with the DDx. We often found difficult. So we've had one person do it all. We've kind of landed on this bird dog data collection group of 4 to 8 people that collect the data every year. I think it works for a medium-sized firm like ours. So that's, one person, one data collector for every 10 people in the office, small enough to have a conversation with those 40 to 50 projects we submit every year. I don't think that's going to work for every firm. But yeah, bulk upload, small group of folks in charge of collecting the data.
Great, thanks. And then I'll actually give this one out to everyone because it's a fun one. What most excites you about the 2030 commitment work? What kind of what the program works on currently, and or what is in queue for the future?
All right, I'll jump in and start us because I am very excited with the focus towards the impacts of embodied carbon, that which is the impacts of our building materials, the extraction, the processing, the transportation. As we target net zero energy and carbon in the operating side, all of the impacts are from the building itself, and all of that is upfront. So the reductions that we can make are huge. I'm part of a harmonization and collaboration effort with structural engineers, mechanical engineers, landscape architects, and others towards aligning how we track and report and reduce these impacts. The other thing I'm excited about is growing the participation of medium and small size firms and sole practitioners, and improving our reporting amongst our signatories.
I would, I would add that it's not only that everything that David said is absolutely true, and on top of that, it's a great community of firms. The 1,300 signatories, we all started somewhere, right? We all felt that consternation about that first year of reporting, right? And how are we actually going to do this? And so there's a lot of people and a lot of different firms looking to help and share their lessons learned and helping everyone move forward together. So I think the community that the AI 2030 commitment is probably one of the strongest values that there is.
I'm excited that the research tab is back. Because that's something that I used to use a lot to help me understand, from our size, which projects are high performing or which project types are high performing and which ones I need to focus my energy on personally. So I'm excited that's back. I agree with everything everyone else has said also. I think for me, I've experienced some highs and lows the past decade in our 2030 journey. And it was people from this network that reminded me when we acquired our first firm and I was freaking out about our numbers that, hey, that was a firm that wasn't in the program before and now they are. So I had to sort of say, okay, you're right. I need to change my attitude.
Yeah, I think I'll bookend by mirroring David's comment about embodied carbon, but also just carbon in general, like the shift away from energy reduction to carbon reduction. And I think I'm most excited that the 2030 commitment is thinking about both. You'll see in the updates to the DDx this year that we've really focused on operational carbon, where we've actually tied PEUI and fuel source to the eGrid subregion emissions rates, as well as tied our renewable energy to emissions rates for reducing your emissions. So you'll see a whole new slew of data points in the DDX when you import your fuel sources about operational carbon that I think will open up a lot of conversations. It already has with my small team internally, just about the difference between net zero energy and net zero operational carbon. They're not the same thing. They're not calculated the same way. It's been really interesting. And then embodied carbon as well. Collaboration with outside groups like CLF. We're starting to get better. We will have better benchmarks for building types in the future for embodied carbon, figuring out the best way to report embodied carbon. I would note that the AIA DDX does have a optional embodied carbon reporting tool. So if you haven't done it, I would say give it a shot. Try it on a project, a couple projects if you're reporting if you have that embodied carbon data, because it's going to evolve in the future how we report embodied carbon on the DDX.
Thanks all. I know that we're at that hour mark, and this was an hour and a half, but folks sometimes have to pop off. I would encourage, if you are able to stick around, we are going to go out into breakout sessions that kind of align with the topics that were presented. So I should have just opened up all the breakout rooms. So and they should have names on them, but the first one will be about sustainability action plans. The second will be about reporting strategies. So first Keith, second Ashley will chat about reporting strategies. The third will be data visualization with Jesse. And then the fourth should be small firm culture and embodied carbon with David.
How long will we have in the breakout rooms, Yep.
Let's do 15 minutes, 10, 15.
Okay. And then I see there's questions in the chat in the Q&A. If you posed one of those questions and it relates to one of these four things, join the conversation and we'll try to answer it for you.
Yes.
Okay. All right. See y'all in 15.
How do we get there? Breakout rooms.
You should have. Do you see a kind of breakout room opened up for you? Let me see. I can manually move you too.
I might need you to. Thanks. Thank you.
Yep. For folks who are still kind of lingering around, and encourage you to kind of pop into one of the breakout sessions, see what most interests you. You should be able to kind of pop in and out of others as well. Yeah, we have a great set of panelists who are ready to dive in deep on all things data, reporting, sustainable action plan, small firm culture.
It was lovely.
I'm glad. Yeah, we had a fair bit dip down who don't want to participate in breakout rooms, which I totally understand. Sometimes you're like, I signed up for a webinar, I just want to listen and not engage. But
Yeah.
Well, they missed out.
for those who stayed and are engaging, hopefully it is a fruitful conversation.
It was good.
Alrighty, I think we have everyone back. Great, so we're just right about on schedule. I wanted to leave these last few minutes if anyone had lingering questions that they weren't able to ask. Maybe they could only stay in one breakout room and wanted to ask about another, or happy to give this time to maybe if our breakout room heads wanted to give a quick snapshot on what they discussed in their breakout room. Happy to be accommodating for anything.
Did we get those Q&A questions answered, the lingering ones? I don't know if anyone can report out. I didn't answer them in my session, so.
I think you answered mine.
Okay, yeah, but there were questions about PEUI.
All right.
Well, I'll just report out that we quickly went into a discussion of, you know, clients and how they react to, you know, some of these ideas and pitching it in different terms. And then, you know, does the real estate community in our region engage in, you know, marketing the higher performance of better buildings, which I thought was a really good question. Just maybe bring that back to the whole group. You know, is there a way that we can engage the broader development community in participating?
Great, thanks, David.
Talked a little bit in my group about the challenges of reporting and getting projects to actually do some energy modeling and have a PUI, considering 2030 commitment is only reporting annually. So one thing I didn't share is that we have check-ins internally where we're to ownership about project updates in general, but also more specifically what the EUI is for your project and how it relates to the 2030 commitment, you know, how your project specifically is doing in relationship to the 2030 commitment. So I think having those check-ins outside of the reporting helps when it gets to the reporting so that you actually have that data and those numbers to report. And the importance of reporting even if you do not have an energy model, because your energy reduction will follow the energy codes that you're using.
There's one question in the chat I might launch over. How do you get PUI? We now get it on Title 24, but for older projects, the T24 didn't include it, and we'd like to track those projects too. They are sometimes not yet even in construction, even though under an older code.
We were just chatting about this in the DDx subgroup yesterday, I believe, and there's a calculation that you can use. I think it's available on our help pages. Last time I Googled it, if you do like T24 to EUI, I believe it's on our 2030 commitment help pages. It kind of walks you through how to get to PUI from that California energy code required number.
Yeah, it's the older ones. It's now part of it, but older ones, it was a time dependent value that was reported, and we just turned to our consultant who does the you know, energy performance and Title 24 calculations, and they were able to translate it for us. So
Yeah,
consultants help.
And
Yeah.
AIA California also has a Excel calculator that's on their website that does the same calculation.
But as noted in the question, it is now the PUI is given as part of that output, which is great.
Saw the question, if the project is not energy modeled, how do you get a PUI? So there was that one graph I had that related the scatter plot one that related the energy codes, whether it was IECC or ASHRAE code, to the 2003 CBEX baseline. So if you're entering your project, you say, I'm in Seattle, Washington, I'm using the 2018 Seattle Energy Code, it will just automatically enter in your PUI as, I think it's like 53% better than the baseline, because it knows if you're following that prescriptive energy code in Seattle, that will be roughly your PUI reduction percent, and then it just transposes it into a PUI number depending on your project type.
I have a question. I might have missed this part. Are you still reporting on LPD in the system?
Yes.
Yes.
Interiors
Yep,
definitely
LPD.
takes a smaller, much smaller percentage of projects and gross square footage, but we do have interiors only section for folks to put in that data.
And I think you can enter your LPD for any project if you want extra work.
And extra credit for reporting embodied carbon. Currently optional. I don't think it's going to be optional for too much longer. So as Jesse encouraged, get up to speed, try it with one project, and then set a target. You know, I think our firm's target is 50% of our projects we do the calculations on. And ideally, at least one gets into carbon storing territory. But I'll tell you, it is really, really difficult to get there, but worth the effort to try.
You know, one of the questions that came up in our SAP group was about finding the examples, the archive of examples that firms have posted. So I just put it into the chat. It's found in the DDx, so you have to log into the DDx, but then if you follow the link that was provided, the sustainability action page will come up, and just click on explore examples, which is a link in the body of the text.
Thanks, Keith. Final question, last minute. Is there a place where we can see what the prescriptive PUI is for a given area, as if we just did code minimum? For example, a client asked us to hit a certain PUI, but we aren't sure what typical PUIs are for this building type in our area.
I was just Googling for the document and I couldn't pull it up in 5 seconds, but I do know that it's a partnership we have with New Building Institute that correlates energy code to PUI reduction percentage based on the 2003 CBEX. I feel like maybe, we should have a follow-up with that person so that we can send them that data. I would use the DDx. That'll tell you if you just enter in your project information, your project location, your project type, and you say, I don't have an energy model, it will tell you what your reduction is. And then you can calculate your PUI from the baseline. Or just email me. I can help.
If you email 2030commitment@ai.org, I'm happy to follow up on that question for anyone and any other additional questions. Well, we are right at time. We filled an hour and a half. Thank you so much to everyone who was able to join, especially kind of that full hour and a half, and many, many thanks to our 4 panelists who were able to share all things expertise on what positive 2030 commitment engagement looks like for their firms. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye, Al.
Well.
You.